Hi there and welcome back to my channel. This is Sean, the Honest Book Reviewer, with another book review. In this video we're discussing Inside Threat, written by Matthew Quirk. It's a thriller action type story. Now this book has a great concept. So it's all about a threat to the White House from the inside. Or is the president the threat himself? A great concept, and I think he ties it in very nicely with the current climate in some countries, where a lot of people may distrust government. So I think a good choice for a plot, but it doesn't deliver very well in this story. The book becomes a bit of a mess, especially when the story shifts to a particular environment in this book. It happens quite early on in the story. So for a lot of the book, it's quite a mess. We have multiple characters, a lot of movement, a lot of discussion, and a lot of talk about, tunnels and things like this with numbers, not names, and rooms with numbers or letters. And then you have to kind of work out where people are. You got to picture all this in the story all the time in your head when you're reading it. It's very hard to follow. So I think a great concept, but the delivery could have been a lot better. The book starts off so well, with a great hook, some great scenes, and I was fully engaged with the story at the very start. So we start off with this mysterious person going into the White House, and we think he works there. But we also think he's up to no good. You get that through his point of view. So it's a multi-point of view book, but the points of view at the very start are written very well to great effect, and it drags you into the story, dragging me in anyway. And then we meet some of the people working in the White House on the Secret Service, and the different types of characters. We have a main character who's been demoted to a desk job, and his job seems to be just to make sure people are there in the right area of the White House, are they armed or not. He tracks all that. And that character kind of feels like the main character in another book written by the same author. In that book, the main character was an FBI agent who got demoted in a way, maybe, to the White House on a desk job, and it just felt like the same feel for the main character in this story. So I kind of wonder about that. Is the author going to have more books in the future with agents getting demoted to desk jobs? It just feels a bit same in the story. That character's name is Eric Hill, the one that has the same feel as the main character in the previous book by this author. There's another main character in this story called Amber Cody, Agent Cody. She's new to the Secret Service on her first day in the White House, and then she's kind of dragged into this activity. She's brought along on this secret super mission to protect the president from a threat. Will that happen in real life? I'm not sure. It just seems like a junior agent will not be taken along in real life for that situation. It feels a bit forced, but it happens in this story, so we're dragged along for that. And Amber Cody has her own kind of hang-ups, driving her to do well in this position she's in. And that feels a bit like a stereotype for this type of story, but it works okay. Amber Cody is an okay character in this story. Scenes in the first part of the story where we have a kind of attack in the inside of the White House. Nobody knows who it is, but it seems to be, threats in the White House going on. We've got real threats happening in action and movement, agents trying to find out what's going on. People are scared, the president's scared and worried, but then there's also doubt about the president because we see him in scenes whispering to people. There's secret conversations going on at the same time. And then when there's movement going on, when they're trying to move the president out of the White House to safety, other things happen as well that cast doubt on the president and other characters in this book. That's a great setup for this whole story, and I thought at that moment this is going to be a fantastic story. I was gearing up for a great read, I was right into the book, but then it all went to pieces. So the action moves to this underground complex called Raven Rock, and it's from the Cold War era in the story. And this whole premise relies on the villains of the piece knowing already that the president will go to Raven Rock. He could go anywhere. He could go to Air Force One, he could go other places. So how did the villains guess that he'd go to Raven Rock? That's very forced in the story. That's the first fault in this book. Then in Raven Rock, it's underground complex. There's multiple tunnels branching out. There's just multiple doors labeled numbers, and the tunnels are labeled letters, I think. And so the action takes place with characters moving to these tunnels and these doors, these rooms, and it's all described as, are you in tunnel B? I'm going to tunnel C. I'm going to go to door this. I'm going to go to door that. It's all about these numbers, letters, and directions, and you have to follow that in your head when you're reading this story. It's very hard to do. So for a very small footprint story, and I usually do like small footprint stories, It's not done very well in my view, because you have to keep picturing this whole complex in your mind. There's a map at the start of the book, and you have to kind of flip to that map constantly to work out where people are. So there's too many people in this small space, going to too many places that sound the same. So it's very hard to keep track of what people are doing in this book. And that kind of just takes you out of the action so many times in this story because you're trying to work it out. Action happens, you got to stop and wonder where people are. Where are they in the story to each other? Is tunnel B next to tunnel C? Is it below? Is it above? You got to keep remembering all these things. So it takes you out of the action in the book so often. And it ruins the read because this is an action type story. The suspense and movement and that thrilling type moments in the story that drives the whole book along. So you need to kind of be in that moment all the time in the story and not be dragged out of it. So for this book, I'll just talk about two main characters, Eric and Amber. First, Eric. Now, Eric is a bit of a stereotype, I think, and he feels just a bit like the same as the main character in The Night Agent, written by the same author. He's got the same setup. He's an agent, has something in his past, he was demoted to a desk job, and he's frustrated with that position. But he just does it, and he gets along, and then he's dragged into this situation and becomes kind of the lead agent, or the one who's most trusted in that position. Feels like the night agent. And also, he distrusts everyone he meets, which is the same as the night agent. And he's wondering who to trust. And a lot of this book is driven by his point of view, wondering who to trust. Can he trust himself even? And he kind of tells people all the time, don't trust me, I could be one of the villains as well. He's trying to be fair, I think, in the situation, but it feels weird in that way. And just that whole setup of this character, he fits the type of book this is. But it just feels like he's just a copy sometimes of that main character in The Night Agent. Agent Cody, Amber Cody, I think people will engage with her a lot in this story, but she is a stereotype of sorts. She's on the job, first day on the job, and she's driven to do well because her father was on the job as well, he was liked, he was a good agent, and she wants to prove herself because of her father's memory. So a bit of a stereotype, but a good agent in this story, a good character. And I did engage with Amber a lot in this book. But again, trying to engage with characters in this story when they're moving around this small complex where it's all numbers and letters and you're trying to just work that map out in your head. To engage with the characters a lot, you've got to forget about the map. Otherwise, you spend so much time trying to work out the map in your head that the characters kind of fall into the background a bit. Even though sometimes they shouldn't, they do. Because what's important to you is trying to work out all the movement and where they are, when the author's trying to make the action important. And so Amber Cody, while she's a good character, and I think people will engage with her a bit in the story, maybe some readers won't say much because they're just trying to work out where she is in the book rather than who she is as a character. If this book had had the same style and feel as the first part, where it was so exciting, so engaging, and I was drawn into the story so much, would have been a fantastic read. Unfortunately, when it went to Raven Rock, everything changed. And I was just trying to focus on this map in my mind so much that it's kind of lost the whole story a bit. And it's very hard to follow all the character movement and what's going on when you're trying to work out where they are in the story. I rate this a 2 out of 5. It should have been written a bit better, I think. Maybe a different focus, maybe a different area to take the story rather than Raven Rock. I'm not sure. But it just kind of lost me in this book. And I think a lot of readers will also have the same reaction when they read this. A lot of readers, I think, will like it because it just has this kind of movie script feel to it. But I think a lot of readers may just get lost in the trying to tracking where the characters are in this story. On my channel, I review a lot of thrillers. If you like thrillers, check out my channel and subscribe. On the screen now is a link to another video for a book I'm sure you'll enjoy.